So what's the lineup we've got today, Jordan?
Yeah, so it's a couple minutes after 4, so we can definitely get started here.
Let me so Jordan, I'm going to send you over some more stuff too. I've been working in parallel with you on stuff, and I think I got a way to simplify it too. So
That's a challenge.
yeah.
One of our tax principles, simplicity.
It's true. All right, so we'll call to order this. It is a meeting of the School Funding Commission, but it's not a meeting where we have a quorum. It's a public meeting though, and it is posted, and it's a meeting exclusively for an extended public comment period, and it's not for commission discussion or deliberation or votes on anything or anything like that. So we'll start it like we do every public meeting with a quick roll call of the members. I'll start it off. Luno here in Hopkinton, and I see Mel Myler.
Mel Myler calling in from Contoocook.
And I see Corinne Cascadden.
Corinne Cascadden, I'm in my home office in Berlin, but I've been painting in the cellar all day, so my screen is black.
Thanks for joining us, Corinne. And Bill Ardinger?
Yes, in my law office in Concord and by myself.
Great, thanks, Bill. And Val Zancha?
In my office in Jaffrey.
Great, thanks, Val. And we've got our team from the Carsey School with Carrie Portry.
Hi, Carrie Portry. I'm at the Carsey School, and my colleague Andres is in the other room.
Great, thanks, Carrie. And Jordan Hensley.
Jordan Hensley here in Dover. My fiance is also in the house.
Great, and Bruce Mallory.
Here in my home office in Kittery Point, Maine. Family downstairs.
Terrific, thank you, Bruce. And I know I see we've got a bunch of we've got a lot of members of our community here with us this afternoon, so we'll be bringing them in shortly. Just go real quick. I think I've found these extended sessions to be very helpful, and I hope members of the commission and the community have felt that way. Does give us a chance to I think hear a little bit more and not be burdened by 2 hours of meeting on our backs. So I think it's a good opportunity. There isn't a quorum present for this, so if it's something, and of course we're near the tail end of our work, but if it was something that you really wanted to bring forward as a presentation to the commission, reach out to me or Bruce on that. The commission does engage in substantial public engagement through New Hampshire Listens, and the work of actually the public engagement work group, which is chaired by Representative Myler. But we also provide other ways of leaving public comment through the commission website, which is hosted at carsey.unh.edu/school-funding, or you can email the commission at schoolfunding, it's all one word, .commission@unh.edu. So I guess again, this is public comment. It's not a Q&A session. And reason for that is it's really important for members of the commission to hear what's important to you, because that has to be what's important to us. And we've heard it a lot, but they're working really well, so we'll keep talking about them. We do operate under a set of group agreements that keeps our work civil and productive. I think people who have watched the last several commission meetings, work group meetings, have seen those come into play, and I think they do work well. We definitely are attacking ideas and stuff like that, but we don't make anything personal. There's no, I'm not here with a stopwatch looking at that, but if it's clear that people get the gist of what you're talking about, we'd probably like to keep things moving. Jordan Hensley's managing the meeting, so he'll be looking for people to raise their hand on Zoom or *9 if you're dialing in. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jordan and to take us through.
Fantastic. So folks, please raise your hand and you'll get in the queue. We've already got some hands raised, and our first speaker here will be Cheryl.
Welcome, Cheryl. Thanks for coming to the commission this afternoon.
Thank you very much for giving us the time to speak on this topic. I'd like to address the concerns from the city of Nashua. Nashua is projected to see a decrease of $6 million in school aid from the state. The bulk of this loss can be found from, as far as we can tell, the calculation for free and reduced lunch. This is the population of students that's been most affected by the changes in the education system since the pandemic began. And a decrease of this magnitude is something that cannot be absorbed by our municipality. This is the population where we need to increase our funding and to help the students succeed in these trying times and in the time of remote learning. We encourage you to reconsider how these calculations are being done for this year and reconsider how you can send additional funding to our communities to help with this monumental task. And that's pretty much all I had to say. Thank you for your time.
Cheryl, thanks very much for raising this this point specifically. I know I usually don't comment back on public comment, but I would like to say that we have filed legislation to at a minimum provide what was provided to districts via state grants in FY21 to continue to provide those in FY22. It doesn't fix the problem, but it makes it better than what could happen otherwise. So,
thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Cheryl.
All right. Next we have Margaret.
Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Great.
My name is Margaret Turner, and I'm Chair of the Board of Selectmen in Waterville Valley. I'm speaking here today on behalf of my community. I have seen several options discussed by the Commission, which would more than double our tax rate. Our community takes great pride in supporting all of our school, municipal, and county requirements, as well as finding ways to attract businesses and encourage our existing businesses to grow and expand. As a result, our efforts over many years have led to excellent property values and relatively lower tax rates. Our elementary school, one of the best academically in the state, typically has a small enrollment, but in 2020, our enrollment more than tripled. So our expense per student will be reduced significantly this year. Our main concern about proposed changes in the state school taxation method is that it is a one-issue approach, which ignores the impact on retirees, of which we have many, and community businesses. It fails to reward past success at doing what needs to be done to broaden the tax base. It ignores looming sizable infrastructure expenses, such as replacement of a 40-year-old wastewater treatment system. This kind of tax increase could drive businesses already struggling from the impact of COVID-19 to further curtail their operations or leave our community. We believe that all New Hampshire communities need to be incentivized to take the steps necessary to broaden their tax base and increase their property values through better schools and more commercial development, rather than relying on a handout from the state that was generated by overtaxing communities that have worked hard to accomplish just that. Thank you for your attention.
Margaret, thanks very much for sharing your comments today, and thank you for the great work you're doing in Waterville Valley with the board.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jeff.
Welcome, Jeff.
Good afternoon, and Chairman Luno, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. My name is Jeff McLynch, and I'm the project director of the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project. In my time before you this afternoon, I'd like to share with you a few of the project's observations about the draft materials the commission began considering earlier this week. And I know that Doug Hall would also like to be recognized later in this meeting to offer a few thoughts on data access and availability. Before I begin, however, and since this might be my last opportunity to do so publicly, I want to express the project's gratitude to the members of the commission for the countless insights they've brought to the task before them over the past 10 months, and for the innumerable hours they've sacrificed in service to our state. And since I see Bruce, Jordan, and Carrie here as well, I'll extend that gratitude to them as well. I know that they've been working incredibly hard. The deep and personal devotion that every member of the commission has evinced to building a better future for New Hampshire's school children and taxpayers has really shown through in every meeting that you've held. And importantly, for those granite staters struggling in the face of inequitable educational opportunities and disparate property tax rates, the commission's work to date does offer some hope for progress. More specifically, the materials that you all discussed earlier this week articulate several important principles, including the concept of fiscal neutrality, which stipulates that the level of expenditures a district makes on behalf of its students shouldn't be related to the level of property wealth available in that district. Similarly, they espouse the notion that should New Hampshire rely upon a statewide property tax to help meet its educational obligations under the Constitution, such a tax should be remitted in full to the state treasury. And in recognition of the undue burdens school property taxes place on low and moderate income homeowners, the commission materials repeatedly emphasize the need for a robust property tax relief program. The New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project supports the commission's position on each of these topics. Likewise, in its draft materials, the commission accepts the innovative approach to school funding developed for it by the American Institutes for Research, AIR. That approach would move New Hampshire from funding public schools on the basis of inputs to one centered on outcomes, as you all know. Now, from our perspective at the School Funding Fairness Project, that approach is incredibly valuable as it demonstrates quite clearly that it's possible to comply with constitutional mandates requiring that the state provide an adequate education to every child and that the state pay for an education for such an education with a uniform tax rate, while also targeting school funding to those students in those districts most in need of greater assistance. We would recommend that the commission put AIR's findings about New Hampshire's current school funding system front and center in its report and underscore the conceptual value of its educational cost model. Finally, we're encouraged that the commission's draft materials acknowledge New Hampshire's failure to provide sufficient support for special education, school building aid, and other categorical programs, each of which is vital to ensuring that every child has the opportunity to receive a constitutionally adequate education. And we're similarly encouraged that the commission has outlined steps to remedy those failings. Unfortunately, though, the commission's work to date also raises some serious concerns. Of note, the materials presented to the members of the commission this week lack the degree of specificity necessary to guide future efforts to improve school funding, neglecting, for instance, to include the dollar figures associated with the new funding formula developed by AIR. Likewise, while the commission may be prepared to endorse substantial improvements in state and local property tax relief measures, it is yet to detail what those changes might entail. Even more troubling is the commission's apparent position on the sources of revenue associated with school funding in New Hampshire. Though the commission pledged to do so, it ultimately failed to consider a full array of options for financing the state's obligation to provide an adequate education, leaving the commission, much as New Hampshire is today, almost entirely reliant on the property tax. Worse still, the commission appears poised to deem disparities in school property tax rates among different communities as quote unquote acceptable, a position that contradicts both multiple Supreme Court rulings and the views of the general public expressed via the commission's own engagement activities. The commission also appears ready to endorse a funding mechanism described as mandatory local minimum contributions that would perpetuate the inequities of New Hampshire's current system for financing public schools. Those mandatory minimum contributions would seem to function in a manner quite similar to the existing SWEPT and effectively allow property wealthy cities and towns to contribute at lower tax rates than other localities. The New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project strongly urges the Commission to address these concerns in its final report and remains optimistic that the work of the Commission will come to represent a significant step forward on the road to fairness for students and taxpayers. Even so, A great distance on that road is still to be traveled. The New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project looks forward to continuing that journey with the members of the commission and the incoming legislature in the months ahead. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much, Jeff, and thanks for all of your energy and effort on this subject, and for hanging with us for the last almost a full 11 months. So
it's been an enlightening experience.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have John.
Welcome, John. Let's see. I think John is still muted.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
We
hear you, John.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for meeting folks and for offering some public discourse. I'm a homeowner in Lisbon, also the home of the Lisbon Regional School Panthers. Thanks again for the opportunity. As I look through the draft materials, I'm going to quote a specific passage, and an implication is made within your draft materials that differing rates between communities is acceptable. Specifically, the passage reads, "It is axiomatic," and this is a quote, "it is axiomatic that because the value of real property differs across communities and different voters across communities, that use of local property tax will result in different rates among communities, but such rate differentials are acceptable as long as the state budget contribution coupled with a more progressive state aid distribution formula is sufficient to reduce unreasonable tax burdens in communities with lower property values," close quote. I just want to make a statement that this implication opens the already open door to continue to punish so-called property poor towns like my hometown of Lisbon. In towns like mine, proportionately more and more town revenue is earmarked for school funding, with less and less going to town services. This is not acceptable for us. We need to resolve this overarching issue that property poor towns face, and we will continue to face if this principle is propagated with any new legislation. We pay proportionately more to fund schools than do so-called property rich towns, and effectively pay higher rates than do property rich towns. Thank you for allowing this statement. We appreciate it.
John, thanks so much for your comments and sharing those thoughts with us. So I know we'll be taking those to heart for sure. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Paul.
Welcome, Paul.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you all again today. Again, my name is Paul Deschaine. I'm employed by the town of Newington as a project manager, and specific the project of the commission's work. And my purpose in raising my hand today was to clarify and maybe amplify a comment I made at the close of the last commission meeting after a marathon session of 3 or 4 hours. I certainly didn't want to belabor the issue, and I don't think any of us were in the right frame of mind to articulate very well, but given this opportunity, I hope to do so. I first of all want to state, as I've also stated before, is that the town of Newington is going to have to reserve the right to comment on the report when it actually becomes available. Obviously, the time frames that we're dealing with makes it an unfortunate result that the report will probably come out before that opportunity, but I appreciate the fact that there's going to not be an opportunity to report and comment on that report subsequent to its release. The second reason for amplifying my statements from last Monday is I wanted to make sure that there's clear that the town of Newington and its residents, as being residents of New Hampshire, certainly do recognize that all school-age children are our kids, as Representative Myler has been quoted as saying before, and we didn't lose sight of that. But I think there's a dichotomy of why the commission exists and why it's doing its work versus how it's going to fund its work is the two important factors to meet. I think the Newington residents certainly support the why. It's the how that we have the major concerns with. And this is going to be a matter of perception, no matter how you call it a state tax. It doesn't change that it will be administered locally. The state tax will be based on locally assessed property located within a locality. Questions regarding your assessment will still be addressed by local officials, such as your town or city assessor. Abatements and defensive values will be carried on at the municipal level. If an abatement is granted for whatever proper reason, there's currently no provision in the commission report to have the state refund the portion of the state property tax that may have been abated. Thirdly, collection costs. As some of you may know, that a lot of people do, but not all people pay their tax bills when due. And it can be a period of in excess of 2 years before sometimes those obligations are met by the taxpayer. Yet the state will certainly want its money when it's due. And the towns and cities will be fronting that money in their payment to the state, yet it may not have actually collected those revenues. So that's going to be another cost and administrative burden. So an administration of a statewide tax from a taxpayer's perspective is still going to be viewed as a local tax. It's much like if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Or more succinctly with, if it's assessed locally, if it's collected locally and adjudicated locally, it's a local property tax, no matter what you call it. I do want to close by thanking the commissions for their efforts. It's been a monumental task. And we also thank you for recognizing the need for greater property tax relief and support for those who have struggled to meet their property tax obligations. We do appreciate those principles that have been stated to that effect that needs to go hand in glove with the commission's recommendations. However, if the success of all this work hinges on a perception that this is a state tax, I'm not so sure that you do so at your peril for the reasons stated. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Paul, thanks very much. And thanks for all your time. You've been with us for a long part of this this work effort, and I really do appreciate your comments today and bringing forward, I think, some things that we need to take a strong look at. So thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, next we have Jane.
Welcome, Jane.
Hello, everyone. Like everyone else who has observed the commission's work, I again want to applaud your efforts and thank you for the hours, countless hours that you folks have put into this issue. It is one of the most complex issues, and every single commission member has been extraordinary in their efforts. And I personally want to thank you all very, very much for what you've done. And I have been, I used to do a lot more litigation than I did. And I was trained by two folks who began everything with a story. If they could condense their point to a little story, then they had everybody, eating out of their hand. It was kind of miraculous to watch them. And so my story for you is all the commission members are like the character House in the movie, in the TV show House. And I don't know if you know this particular television show, but he was a brilliant, I don't know if I have the right word, diagnostician, right? He was a medical doctor who could figure out the most complicated, crazy health problems. And the show would go on, he'd try something, he'd, go be misdirected, and he'd try again and he'd be misdirected. But by goodness, by the end of the episode, he had diagnosed this very rare disease. You folks have diagnosed the problems with education funding. You've done a brilliant job in analyzing complex data and in really understanding where the gaps are. But I'm going to echo some of the other prior speakers in that where the commission basically couldn't or didn't do is You just you don't have the right medicine to treat the disease. You're still relying on the property tax as the only source to fund education funding. And I think that truly is the problem that you're going to run up against. And what I find very interesting is it's pretty much most of the folks who've been following this have an agreement on that issue. And again, it would be wonderful if you could have Commission 2.0, where you could then now spend the next, months and hours to really try to drill down on the funding piece, which is very, very complex. And I think if you leave it to the legislature, to its own devices, unfortunately, because of its complexity, you might find a piecemeal approach that might, end us back where we started before this commission began. One of the points in the draft reports that I've seen is that there's a statement that the SWEP would be remitted to the state and then redistributed. And I would urge the commission to strike that recommendation in its final report, because unfortunately, I think that would lead to the return of a donor town system. And I really don't think that's the intent of the commission. And I really don't think that would go towards reaching the commission's goal. One of the things that is problematic, that unfortunately we find ourselves in these COVID times. And so one of the problems the state's going to have, obviously, too, is expending money on administration of any sort of tax collection. And I think one of the things that this commission has done really well is tried to include all constituencies, in its scope. But one of the problems that might come from a recommendation of the remittance of the state tax through the state is, again, that unfortunate dichotomy with a donor town situation. And I think that is something that this commission should try to avoid if at all possible, because what would happen for a donor town would be that if they were had a budget shortfall, that services would be cut, or again, local taxes would be raised. And that's, again, not what this commission has offered as its fundamental principle. So I appreciate and have reiterate my other comments on other sources of funding, the issues with valuing commercial property. I do see that the current use value is in your draft report. Unfortunately, you were unable to look at sources other than the property tax. But I again applaud all of your efforts and thank you very much for your work and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Jane, and likewise, thank you for all of your time, effort, energy. You've been with us from day one, and certainly long before that as well. So thanks for your commitment to the kids in Portsmouth and surrounding towns and this work. Great. I think did Doug want to make a comment? I think Jeff may have suggested that. Yep.
Yeah, here he is. I'll bring him in now.
Great. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you to all the commission members. Jeff gave you already the position of the School Funding Fairness Project in regard to your working materials. I'm just going to submit comments, and I will do this in writing subsequently, regarding the data behind the work of AIR and the commission. Primarily, I ask that the commission make sure that all the data used to analyze the current system and project the future system, all that data is open and available to the public in the most useful possible format. our project is a multi-year effort, and we're going to be around for some years beyond the time the commission finishes its work. And my comments, and I have 6, are based on the AIR documents, the simulator, the explanation of the simulator, and what is the most recent AIR report, version 5 draft on the commission website. First, the simulator spreadsheet should be made available in unlocked form. There are any number of users for that subsequent to the commission's existence, and currently that spreadsheet requires passwords on various, the spreadsheet requires different, I think it's different passwords on different worksheets within the spreadsheet. All of those should be unlocked. The simulator spreadsheet draws data from at least 2 other worksheets that have evidently not yet been made available. Cell C5 draws from a worksheet called District Outcomes, which has not been made available. And cells in many columns rely on data in a Muni export worksheet, also has not been made available. Both of those worksheets and any others should be made available unlocked with the data for every district in town. Third, table 17 in the AIR report, which is on page 29. It provides the outcome measures, the Z-scores, and the outcome factor score for 5 school districts, but only 5. The table with all the districts with those outcome measures, Z-scores, and outcome factor score should be made available publicly. The AIR report notes that 11 years of each outcome measure were used in the correlation analysis, which is wonderful. How the annual data were averaged and merged is not discussed anywhere. And all that data should be made available in spreadsheet form and made available to the public. To the extent that our current school funding system has changed based on the work of the commission, everyone should want to track the changes in those outcome measures that may occur. And we need to have the baseline measures from which to do that. Now, those are made available on an annual basis by the Department of Education, but clearly AIR has combined these in various ways, and we need to have access to that. Looking forward, a 4-year or 5-year rolling average would probably be the best for each of the outcome measures, so that as time passes, we're substituting the most recent year for the year 4 or 5 years before. But if we don't have that data, we can't do that. 5th item on page 23 of the AIR report is this statement, quote, "There is no clear pattern between district size or grade shares and student outcomes," unquote. This is an important statement, yet both district size and grade shares are used in the town cost simulator, and I worry about this important inconsistency, especially because the simulator effectively rewards smaller schools, and secondly, many towns are still shown with 0 middle school students, which is factually incorrect. If district size and grade shares have no clear pattern to student outcomes, this really is eventually going to have to be looked at in more depth. And my last comment in regard to the data is AIR did do correlation with 4 income-related factors from the Census Bureau in Exhibit 13 on their report, page 22. And I'm glad after doing that AIR rejected use of those census income factors, because none of those factors are really useful for towns and school districts in New Hampshire. The Census Bureau itself says those numbers should not be used for communities with populations under 85,000. So they did look at it. And I'm glad they also rejected use of that. The free and reduced price lunch data is much better at estimating incomes within our communities. Those are my comments, and I thank all of you and thank you for this time.
Doug, thanks very much. And you know, I certainly have to extend my comments back to you in appreciation on behalf of the commission for your time with us from day one, minute one, and long before that too. So so thank you very much, and thanks also for advising us that that the project you know, continues and will continue to go on subsequent to the commission's work. I know the Granite State relies on the work you're doing, and so do we. So thanks very much.
I will submit this in writing to you after this session.
Thanks, Doug, for doing that. There was a lot there, and it's important that we don't make any mistake on that. So thanks.
All right, next we have Leslie.
Okay, Leslie, welcome.
Hi, it's Leslie Want. I know it's too simple. So hi, here from Manchester, and I have to say I've been following your work, but not as closely as the previous two commenters. So I wanted to tell you thank you as well. I would echo those comments from the previous two people, and I would also like to encourage you to be bold. I think that you're on the right track when you are talking about equity for all learners statewide. I want to say that I think that you are sort of traveling a fine line between telling the truth and sort of the political reality in New Hampshire that a lot of people don't want to address equity, and that there are many towns and cities that the valuation is not the same as in other places of the state, but we are all one state, and our students all belong to all of us. And I believe the treasures of New Hampshire belong to all of us. So because we are one state, it seems to make sense to me to do as I think you have proposed, or have some of your ideas have run along the lines of collecting all of the school taxes into one pot and then distributing them more equitably, not necessarily based on property valuation, but based on what it might cost to provide an adequate education in a particular location. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's a very bold notion. And I have to say that I do think that politically it will come up against a wall, but it is the right thing to do. And I sincerely believe that in New Hampshire, this state belongs to all of us. We all pay for the roads, we all pay for the infrastructure. And one of those pieces of infrastructure is education. And so I do believe that you're on the right track when you talk about collecting all of the education property tax, collect it all into one pot and then distribute it more equitably, not according to property valuation as it is now. So I applaud all the work you've done, the hours and hours and hours of work that you've done and put in, and the depth that you've gone into, and the tremendous amount of thought. I've never seen a commission work as hard as this one has, and as thoughtfully and as in an organized manner. You guys have been amazing, and I'm sure that this work that you've done will go on long past the commission's existence. So I thank you, thank you, thank you, and so appreciate all of your work, and continue to be bold despite the political landscape. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Thanks for sharing your comments, and thanks for your kind words. You know, this has been a lot of work for everybody, but it's a team effort, and it's not just you know, the people on the Hollywood Squares Zoom screen, but people like yourself, Leslie, that are going to the commission website, that are taking a look at meetings and reading minutes and looking at reports, and then sharing your comments on that. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
How's it looking, Jordan?
We're looking good. We have cleared the queue. Oh, no, here's Jane. Okay, looks like Jane is on an older version of Zoom, so we'll be bringing her in.
Okay. Great, welcome, Jane. I think you're muted right now.
Okay, how's that?
Terrific.
Can you hear me okay? All right.
We got you, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Yes, my name is Jane Dewar, and I'm a property taxpayer here in Brentwood. And I'd like to thank the commission for the opportunity to speak today. I was reading some of the draft work, and I just wanted to mention that I'm interested in the Child Benefit Services Grant, RSA 19822. I didn't see it mentioned in the categorical aid section, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention and ask that the New Hampshire state funding for child benefit services grants be reinstated. For those unfamiliar with child benefit services, it's a list of non-secular education-related health services and teaching and testing supplies for New Hampshire's kindergarten through 12th grade students attending non-public schools here in New Hampshire. These services were approved by the New Hampshire Supreme Court and supported by New Hampshire's RSA's 186-1133. That's kind of our equality and education law. And with that said, I just wanted to, bring that to your attention and appreciate your consideration. And thank you for all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Shane. Thanks for bringing that that to our attention and having those RSAs at your fingertips. That makes it that's very helpful for us too. So so thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Great, thank you.
All right, we don't have any other hands up at present, so if there's anybody else that would like to provide comment, please raise your hand and I will bring you in. Or if you're Bruce Kneuer, I think, on the phone, we've seen that phone number a lot, you can hit *9.
So I'll just make a couple of comments here. I know there were some questions about availability of spreadsheets, and particularly the Z-score performance outcome. That's been on, my understanding, that's been on our commission's website for a long time now. I did see recently that under resources, when we used to have a pull down of both committee meetings and general resources, that has somehow, I mean, you can still get to it, but it's not through the pull down anymore. So I don't know if that's has caused some confusion. Jordan, you know what I'm talking about? Because we talked about this. I know we had this.
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, so the Z-scores are on the website. It's an Excel file. It's under it's on the resource page. So carsey.unh.edu/school-funding/resources. The top tab is the resources we've received from our partners at AIR, and the Z-scores are in there. Doug, you mentioned version 5. I think the final report from AIR that we received is version 10.
Yeah.
So not to say that so there may be some things that have changed based on previous feedback. And then yes, so if you hover over the current resource tab on our website, if you just click on resources, it takes you to the resource page. If you hover over, there's a sub tab for the meeting documents and video. And if that's a logistical change some of our tech people made to, I think, for functionality purposes. But if it's confusing, it's not worth the confusion, and we can add that sub tab as well back in there.
I liked it when we had both sub tabs there.
Yeah, that's no problem. We can.
Yeah. Great.
Cool.
I think Carolyn's got her hand up.
Perfect. Carolyn, let me bring you in now.
Hi, Carolyn. Welcome. Welcome back.
And like everybody else, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done. It's really pretty impressive. I do, like other people, have some questions and concerns. I wasn't able to listen to the whole meeting on Monday, so I didn't get to the accountability part. Did you talk about accountability? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but there'll be more talk about that. So.
Okay, because that's an issue that I had raised before, that knowing that school funding from adequacy aid was going to districts that had higher proportions of free and reduced lunch, and yet we weren't seeing any change in the performance of the kids. And there was stabilization money going to those districts as well. And over, from 2012 to the present, there hasn't been much of a change in student performance. So I'm wondering just how you're going to deal with the issue of, we're trying to get everybody up to average, which of course is a problem for the districts that are above average right now. But if we can get the lower performing districts to average, how is that going to be accomplished? Is it just going to be by giving them more money, or will there be some necessary allocation of those funds to get the kids to average? Because we know that the free and reduced lunch kids are the ones who are bringing the average down for many districts, but nobody's supposed to know who those kids are. And so that presents a little bit of a dilemma. I'm also concerned, as I think Doug was, with the data and making the data available. All the data that AIR used should be available to anybody who wants to look at it, because it's sort of like we own it in the state, having the state paying for it. And I actually presented the AIR report to some people I know who are very wise in statistics, one of whom wrote a multivariate textbook. And they were unable to figure out exactly what was done. What was the regression analysis that these folks did? Was it a multi-level regression? How did they include all those 11 years of data into the regression analysis? And there are certain ways of doing it that require some adjustments, but it wasn't clear in the report, and it probably should be clearer in the report. And then the outcome Z-score, which has state assessment, performance, and attendance and graduation rate. That seems a little sketchy to me, in large part because there are an awful lot of school districts that don't have a graduation rate because they don't have high schools. And so I'm not sure really what you do with that in looking at outcome. Plus, the data that AIR did present on the Z-scores has a 0.34 as the average Z-score on the outcome factor, and Z-scores really should have a mean value of 0 and a standard deviation of 1, and that wasn't the case for the outcome factor score. So my biggest concern is all the things that I mentioned, those are big concerns, but probably the biggest is that there are an awful lot of districts that are really going to balk, districts and municipalities that are going to balk at having their taxes raised for this purpose. And I know that you've heard from many of them. Newington is one, of course, Rye, Portsmouth. I'm very concerned about Franklin, and I'm kind of surprised that you haven't heard from Franklin, because their taxes could go up by over $3 per thousand valuation under the model. And, they're a tax cap community, and I don't know how that would be accomplished. And I don't know how it would be accomplished for all of the tax cap communities. And there's something like, I don't know, not as many as there are cities in the state. But that's a concern for me, because Dover is a tax cap community. And we get grief every year talking about spending for schools. Now, Dover would not go up in taxes under the model, but it would still be a problem, I think, for us, as well as for Manchester, for Franklin, for Somersworth. So those are my concerns. But I thank you for all the work that you've done. And I hope that we can all come to some good resolution on this.
Great. Thank you for your sharing your thoughts, Carolyn. Appreciate it
You're
very
welcome.
much. How are things looking, Jordan?
I think no other hands raised. John put another comment in chat, thanking us for all our work and noting that the sticky issue comes down to equality, proper and constitutionality required state funding of education as opposed to local education.
Well, we're gonna
funding, so.
we collect this and post. I mean, the check gets collected, right? And posted.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure it was said.
Great. Great.
But, yep.
I wouldn't mind getting back to writing. Bill.
No, I agree with you. I'm working on the chapter 70.
I know. I know.
I hear you.
So, well, hey, I appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. I really appreciate the time, particularly from our 24 from our attendees today, who have shared their thoughts and words of support and words of wisdom. You know, as we you know, bring this towards a final report, you know, inside 2 weeks. So so a lot of work to do between now and then. There'll be a lot of meetings between now and then, and the commission meeting certainly will have opportunity for additional comment. And I think we also noted, and John brought it up, there'll be opportunity to share comments after the report issues as well, and you know, those can be supplied, you know, either through the form on the website or emailed to get collected, and those can be extensive too. I mean, you can. So anyway, we appreciate everybody's input and feedback on it, and I guess with that we're probably done for this afternoon, and we get back to writing. Yeah, good.
Thanks
all right.
to everyone for their comments.
Thanks all. Take care.